I raced to win right from day one. I think one of my strengths is that when you've won something, that's done and dusted. You're looking at the next one. We decided that we would interview him while Henry Royal Regatta was on. He was picked up in a Rolls Royce from the airport. How embarrassing can it be? He remembers coming down Remmenham Hill of Leander, and he asked the driver of how many people lived in the house on the side there as you're coming down the hill. They said, it's just one little old lady that lives in the house there. He couldn't understand that. My concern was, would he be flexible enough to be able to adjust to the Western world? Within a few weeks, he said, yeah, Steve, I need a meeting with the sports minister. And I laughed at him. I said, why do you want a meeting with the sports minister? He says, there's some fundamental changes that we need to make.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Last Stroke Counts podcast. It is our 100th episode, some 3 years on, and what better guest to bring on than the legendary Steve Redgrave, the greatest Olympian that this sport has ever seen, in front of a live audience. Steve, it's an absolute honour to welcome you to the show today.
Honoured to be here, but I can't believe that you've gone through 100 episodes before you've even invited me to be on. But it is also a first for you guys, is that first in front of a live audience for you, as well as me. I've done a lot of podcasts over the years, but the first one with a live audience.
Well, we'll see how it goes, I guess.
Could be a disaster.
Obviously, there's so much you've done in your career, and so many things have been spoken about. I'm hoping we can maybe find some questions that you haven't answered before. I think to start with, obviously, like Pete said, you're Britain's most successful rower. It's very well known. We all see you from this side of your career and everything that's happened. I think along with that, British rowing now is such a juggernaut in the sport and the system and the pathway that it creates. We've got athletes getting ID'd from 15, 16 onwards, and there's a great pathway through that. I think just to take it back to when you rowed and to bring it a little bit back to Maidenhead, is the last Olympic gold that was won was in 1948 up there. By Bushnell and Burnell. That was 36 years before Britain then won another one. What did it look like rowing in the UK, and certainly British rowing when you started?
It was pretty poor. Even you go back to 48, is that when rowing was introduced into the Olympics, that we used to dominate the sport. There was always a saying within sport, is that the British started a sport, did it, brought it to the world, then everyone else did it better. And rowing was very much in that category. We dominated for a number of years. Obviously, the 48 Olympics was after the Second World War. We got it by default. It was supposed to go to Athens, and they decided they couldn't stage it, and it came to London. And I don't think many people realise is that at those games we only won 3 gold medals. 2 of them were in rowing up at Henley, the pair and the double, and the other one was the 50-kilometre walk. And that's all that Great Britain won at those games. And we didn't do any better moving from there right the way through until really lottery funding came on. And that was the really big difference. So starting rowing in the 70s, I can remember 76 was my first year. It was an Olympic year, Montreal. And I remember sort of a loose sort of following of what was happening out there. We won a 2 silver medals and a bronze, which were pretty good results for that sort of era. But the world had taken the sport on, especially East Germany. They dominated the sport. I think East Germany only ever competed in 4 or maybe 5 Olympics. And in rowing, they've only just been overtaken on gold medals that have been won. And I think they're 3rd or 4th in all sports. Still, I think it's 4th now that they've dropped down to. So in that 4 period of only 4 or 5 Olympics they went to of dominance, but in rowing especially, the Moscow Games, which Eric and I just missed out on, of going in the quadruple scull, is that they won 11 of the 14 gold medals. That it was always Eastern Bloc countries that dominated the sport. So it was pretty tough going. You talk about it now, is that of Lucerne being the top international regatta, when in those early years of racing in the 70s and 80s, is that in quite a number of the events, East Germany would come 1st or 2nd. And you're thinking, that's good, because one of them can't go to the World Championships or Olympics. And it wasn't until sort of mid to late 80s that the East German dominance started to diminish in some ways. So it was very tough going. The Brits were very good at following the same systems that we were doing before, following the same training, same preparation, and we were just getting further left behind. So we were getting better and better at getting worse. And that's where it went for such a long period of time of not really threatening for gold medals. But 84 changed that, and we consistently have won gold medals right the way through till now, apart from 1 Games in Tokyo.
And I think a lot of people would credit you for that. And I think if you've rowed, you realise that it's never one person. And there's obviously like an entire team behind that. But if you look at how Britain has done from sort of 2000 onwards, definitely, like I said before, you kind of created a pathway. You can go to school now and you can start rowing and you can like it and you can think, right, this is something I want to do as a career. But back when you were starting, and you went very quickly from when you first started rowing to potentially being an Olympic prospect in 1980. Was there any sense that you were carving out a path at that time? Do you ever feel like you're, starting a path for other people to go on? Or were you just very focused very early on what you wanted to achieve?
Started, as I said, 76. By 78, at Marlow Rowing Club, where I rowed out of, mainly single sculling, when I was in sort of coming into the senior team, is that we had 3 international coaches at Marlow at that time, coaching international crews, and 1 athlete that was a lightweight world champion, and that they sort of say that, you're capable of being a world champion. They didn't really mention Olympics because they always see that as a step too far. And that's as I was coming to sort of leaving school, is that what do I do? Do I go and find a proper job, or do I just go and keep playing out on the water? But I realised by the end of the 70s is that we were doing it very amateurish. The National Federation was called the Amateur Rowing Association, and I think that summed out very, very well indeed, is that a lot of very enthusiastic people of being involved as administrators and within the sport itself, but not quite getting it right and the preparation right that needed to be. And when you're being told that you're capable of being a world champion, you believe it, and you're thinking, okay, yeah, I can do that. The results that I was getting domestically, I was getting thumped when I went internationally, and a lot of races that I would have liked to have won or done well at, but didn't. And it was a learning process of a guy called Mike Sprackling was coaching me, one of the best coaches that the world has ever seen. And that we were going through a learning process of taking a country that used to be very, very good at the sport, think it should still be good at the sport, but wasn't really doing anything about it. And when you're talking about the sort of the East German system and the Eastern Bloc countries and the odd Western crew that was doing well, they were basically professional athletes training professionally. And we were still amateurs. We were trying to hold down full-time jobs or education. We had a lot of teachers that were involved in the sport because they got long school holidays during the summer when the racing season was. And that we just wasn't doing it to the level that we are. And did I see myself as being sort of a part of setting that path through to success? You're aware of it probably about halfway through your career, but not at the beginning. Is that I rebelled against the Amateur Rowing Association because we were being asked to do the same things year in, year out. And all we were doing, as I said before, was getting better at getting worse. And that Mike Spracklen and myself decided that we would do something a little bit different, try and train a little bit more professionally, do a lot more mileage. Mike always philosophy was miles makes champions, and that even if you're just sitting in your boat floating, and that Mike used to train the athletes that he was under very intense. You're producing a lot of lactic acid. So sometimes you would go out in your boat and you would drift down. Problem with rowing from where we were at that time is his house is that it was upstream, so you could drift down quite well, but you'd always have to row back to get back there. And people say wasn't that a risk to rebel against what was being done at the time and do something a little bit different? But my philosophy, along with Mike, is that if you keep doing the same things, you're going to get the same results. Do something different. And the difference between 83 and 84 was about doing more mileage, doing a lot more endurance work. It was still quite intensive, but naturally, because you're doing more volume, is that the intensity has to go down because you can't do both at the same time. And the risk was that we could fail and still do badly. At least we were trying to do something different. The advantage was that we started getting some good results in the single and then went into the four with 2 months to go before the 84 Olympics. And obviously taking the gold medal from that. And of course, that when you start seeing success, then you go even more into that frame of mind of training, preparation, working harder. Success breeds success.
Yeah.
And so that was really the sort of turning point. But it still took another 20 years before the system that you talk about that's taking over. Almost after my rowing career, that rowing with Andy Holmes in the four, and then in the pair, the Cox and Cox's pairs after that, is that still the attitude was about, oh yeah, technically other people row better. They win because it's Steve and Andy, or Stephen and Matt. That's why they win. But it was developing a whole system, and eventually that people then started doing the sort of similar things that I was training before. And I'm not saying it's sad, because it's great that we do get the results that we do now. But it's very much a production line that you talk about now, is that you don't really have to think about it as an athlete. You have your ambition of what you want to do, and people winning Olympic gold medals thinking, yeah, I want to have some of that. That's good. But you sort of a path has already been carved out for you, and it's following that path that we did through the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, I think not all gold medals are equal. Certainly for reasons like that. Again, Mike Spracklen, it's brilliant to hear a little sort of behind the scenes from him, one of two legendary coaches that you obviously got to work with, and I'm sure we'll talk about the other in a bit. I wanted to ask, a little bit about that, what you touched on before. So in 1980, obviously you went for a sculling position. After that, you were still looking to do the single. I think you liked the idea of the single. What was the decision to move into the four? Had you done much rowing sweep before that? Because you said you moved into that very late.
When I started in 76 at Great Marlow School, is that a guy called Francis Smith, the head of the English department, loved rugby and rowing. He became captain at Marlow Rowing Club. he studied for his degree at Reading, and that's where he really came across rowing. He was aware of it when he was at William Boulez of studying, but when he went on to university, and then Great Marlow started as a school, and he was one of the first teachers to start at that school. And he sort of had this enthusiasm for rugby and rowing. His philosophy was, if you had big hands and feet coming into the school, is you're likely to grow into a big person, and big people suit the sport of rowing. And so as a simple sort of selection process of how he asked a few people to row at the 88 Olympics, Great Marlow had 3 people that were part of the team, and we came 4th or better. So where you've got your sort of private schools that dominate the sport, still do to a degree now, is that from very few athletes of rowing, in my year, we only had 4 people. In the other 2, they were 2 years younger than me, is that there were 12 people in their year group that were rowing. So a very small pool, but getting huge success from it. So his theory wasn't bad. It got people to a good level very quickly.
Yeah. So typically, obviously, when rowers come into the sport, it's because they've tried other sports and they're not very good at them. But I wondered if that's also the case for you. Were you good at things like football and rugby, or rowing was the escape where you found your true sort of potential?
Well, Great Marlow was a football school, a little bit of cricket, and there's a saying in rowing: if you can't catch, throw, or kick, you end up rowing.
Yeah.
And there is a hell of a lot of truth in that. So all those other sports you need a coordination for. I was okay. I was the reserve goalkeeper for my year group at football. My claim to success is at one game that we had a reasonable good team, and I was brought on to going into goal that day. And my boredom, I thought I would jump up and hang from the goalposts, and they snapped in my hand, which the head of sport wasn't very happy with me at the time. I don't think I played for the first again from that. But Francis loved his a rugby, and so he started a rugby side, which tended to be about 6 or 7 of us that used to play a little bit on sports days, and then the football team used to join us if we had a match, but we didn't have a match very often.
Yeah, and then obviously in terms of rowing, you're wildly successful, but everyone kind of remembers being bad when they started. I wonder if there was also a light bulb moment for you when you sort of tried it and wasn't getting anywhere, and then something clicked in your head and it sort of pushed you on to become Steve.
To me, it was an easy decision. Is that heavily dyslexic of when you struggle reading and writing at school. I hated being at school, and that if I didn't go to school, my mum wouldn't let me of go rowing. And then when rowing did come across my path, of course, you can't do it on school premises unless you're at Eton, where you've got Olympic rowing course yourselves. That you have to go out of school to go and do it. And the school's head of the river was always a good day because it's always the middle of the week, and you had to leave school to be able to go and do it. It was fantastic because we got success very early. It was in a Coxed 4 and was Sweepore for those first 3-4 years before then going sculling. I sort of crossed over doing a bit of single sculling at the same time. That sort of success, we went to our first regatta, Avon County's Schools Regatta, in May of 76, and we just thought that was a fun day to go out. We didn't think about racing or winning or whatever. We ended up winning our first race, which was good. Went through the second round quite comfortably. The third round, we raced the same school that we raced in the first round because there was a repechage system. and worked our way through to the final, really sort of shock and enjoying the experience as we were doing it. We led for most of the race by quite a long way, and then somebody fell off their seat and got it rammed in the runners and couldn't get the seat back on the slide. And so that person was doing 2 strokes to everyone else's 1 to try and keep in front of this boat that was closing us down. Fortunately, we managed to cross the line first. The person who fell off their seat was me. So you talk about humble beginnings. I was the stroke of the crew as well, so I'm not quite sure how they kept their rhythm when I was doing whatever I was doing. But in that first season, we raced 7 times and won all 7. We thought we were the God's gift of rowing. We thought we were fantastic. We didn't train quite so much the following winter. And our second year we won 8 events but entered 15, so we started to lose a few, didn't we, Paul?
Yeah.
But it really of you sort of learn from that process is that the more you put into something, the more you get out of it. But what I didn't realize then, that sort of came to me in latter years, is that your Eatons, your Radleys, your Shrewsburys used to have a first 8, a second 8, sometimes a third 8 before they would put a 4 out. And so we were winning Cox 4s events, but we weren't racing the top juniors in our year group. And it wasn't until sort of junior trials that you then start coming across the top athletes. But because we won so much, it was conditioned to us that we win races. So when the going gets tough, you dig in a bit harder. If you're at a school that is not winning on consistently, or a club winning consistently, it's easy when that starts getting tough to thinking, okay, no, it hurts a little bit too much, as we all know rowing does. And it's easy for the brain to switch off and not push. But because we won so much in those first 2-3 years, junior 16s, we never lost in a race in our age group, and we're very competitive in the junior group, racing guys that were 2 years older than us. And so it sort of bred in success. And if that success then gets in there, that you dig deeper. If it doesn't, it's not happening within a race, and you're so disappointed that if you do lose of Reading Regatta from somebody on the inside that had a length's lead because of the bend, it makes you more determined, especially when that person was a lightweight. I can safely say he's not a lightweight any longer.
You're still having to go quite far back to find the losses, which is, but they're better.
I don't have to go that far back to find losses.
I was going to say, one of my questions was going to be a little bit about underdog mentality, and a lot of people, everyone starts as an underdog, so that kind of feels like a comfortable place to be. You feel like you can take risks, nothing to lose. Obviously, having then gone to your first Olympics in '84 and got gold, no longer you are the underdog, but what you said a little bit about that sense of having just bred that in early, about not being worried about sort of having the target painted on your back.
If you look at rowing, especially elite rowing, and the World Championships through to the Olympic Games, is the Olympics tend to be the middle of the summer, depending on what part of the world it is. The Rowing World Championships tend to be September. Can be early September, it can be late September, again, where in the world it is. So actually, you've only got sort of 10, 11 months from the World Championships the year before Olympics. And if you look back, as I have done, as a sad individual I used to be, of looking at rowing results, is that about 80% of the people that win the World Championships the year before Olympics go on to win the Olympics. So do you want to be that 80% that win, or do you want to be the 20% that are trying to turn over the people that win? Give me the 80% every time.
That's a great way to look at it, because I think a lot of people feel the pressure of being there. But for you, if you just break it down statistically, then I think that's a great way to
Rowing's a very
look at it.
consistent sport. And that's one of the downfalls is it in some ways. At the first international regatta, if everybody rose to their form, is that will set the pattern who's going to win the second race or third race. And back in the 80s, we used to race a lot more than we did it by the end of their career and what they do now. But it's a very consistent sport. It's always said that it depends on what work you do in the winter that determines how fast you go in the summer.
Yeah.
And with World Championships, World Cup races, is that there's only 2 or 3 weeks between them. There's a little bit longer from the last World Cup through to the World Championships. So you've got a little bit more time. Rowing's a muscular endurance sport, is that it's mainly down to your fitness that determines how fast you're going to go or how long you can keep that element going. And you need time to be able to train that. You can't change that in 2 or 3 weeks. That you taper down for a race, you race. There's a process of them bringing the training up. When we used to train of race every 2 weeks, there was absolutely no time to do anything. 3 weeks, you've got a little bit more time to do something different. So the World Cup races should be months difference. So you then got opportunity of doing something, and then you've got more chance of other boats, other countries of doing well, instead of having the same countries win the first, second, third, and go on to win the last event of the season.
So having said that, when you came back for your second Olympics in '88, you went for 2. So having said how difficult it is to find the fitness to go for 1, to then come back and go for the Cox and Cox's pair, was that something you had any decision over, or was that a decision that was made for you?
It was totally me.
Yeah?
Yeah. Of rowers have to be stupid, and they don't come more stupid than I do. I suppose because of doing a lot of single sculling, again, you have a slightly different approach at things. And because when I didn't make it as a single sculler, came back into sweep oar and rowing with Andy Holmes that was in that 4 in '84, is that we dominated the world for 2 years. Nobody came close to us in whatever boat that we raced. The Abagnales were the best in the Cox pair, and they were, I think, 8th in Moscow, and then won gold medals right the way through to Barcelona, where the Sell brothers have beat them. But they used to win the Olympics. But Andy and I, every time that we raced them, Cox pair against Cox pair, and not doubling up, we beat them every time. The only times they beat us is when we doubled up, that they would beat us. So when it used to be my first World Championships that we went to in '81, is that of discrimination, is that the women and the lightweights were the first week of 2 weeks of World Championships, and the men's were the second week of 2 weeks. And then it moved on that they sort of moved them together, and over a week of having the races. And but the women's finals used to be on the Saturday, men's finals used to be on the Sunday, and then they came up in '86 with the idea, or after '86 was the last year that happened that way, is that they didn't get very many spectators on the Saturday and got a few more, not a huge amount, a few more on the Sunday. They thought if we mix the programs, we might be able to get big audiences on both days. And that was the theory why they changed. But stupid people like me that would have liked to have doubled up before and couldn't, thinking, okay, there's a Cox's pair now on the Saturday and there's a Cox pair out. We've got 24 hours of recovery to be able to do that. So Andy and I tried to do that at the World Championships the following year. We broke in training. 2 weeks before, we did the format because we'd never done it before, and raced on the Saturday 2 weeks before, and then did it again on the Sunday. Cox's pair on the Saturday on our own without anybody else around, and we broke the world record in both events. So we felt that we could do it. We went to the World Championships. It didn't really click that week. is that we weren't really on the same form as we were 2 weeks before, and that we struggled to get through. I was really struggling that week, and in the semi-finals we finished third in the Cox's pairs. Everyone thought, okay, they're playing the system, they're through to the final. How lucky we were. It was in Copenhagen. It's a very big lake, can get very unfair. Because we finished third, we got an outside lane. It was the best lane, and we went on to take the gold medal in the Cox's pair. Romania pushed us very, very hard. 2 young guys only got selected to go because they won the under-23s 2 weeks before, and that was their selection process. And they were level with us coming up to 1,500 meters, and I just felt awful. I was absolutely dead. And that the Romanians had been leading with us. We sort of got there, and Andy said, right, we've got to go now. And so I thought, right, I'm going to row 10 strokes as hard as I possibly can. If we're not in the lead, I'm going to stop. And that was exactly the thoughts that went through my head. We did 10 strokes as hard as we could. We opened up a little bit of the gap, and you could physically see the Romanians looking over on their shoulder and thinking, wow, we're going to win a silver medal at the World Championships. They're world record holders. That they almost then sort of accepted that we're going to get a silver medal. If they knew how much we were struggling and kept pushing, they probably would have beaten us on that day.
The deals you make with yourself when
and
you're
then
in that
the next
place.
day that we'd won our heats along with the Abignales and got straight through to the final. That they selected the lanes the second day. The Abignales were in the first heat, so they got the best lane. We were next to them. They beat us. We got the silver medal again when we were doubling up of lost. Because we knew that we weren't on our best form that week, we thought next year at the Olympics, if we are on form, we can win both. And that was a little bit of arrogance, a little bit of complacency in some ways. At worst, we think there's a silver medal. If you start thinking like that, the worst happens. We got a bronze medal.
There's a bit of a caveat to that Tom's about to introduce.
Yeah, so Brian Armstrong, who was the performance director during that Olympics, also coached me a long while later when I was coming up. And he told the story about the Cox pair final. He said that when the final went off, you went out like the clappers and had the best start, but then it got recalled for a false start.
Not quite right.
I'd love to hear that. And then said that you got recalled for the false start, and the second time you didn't quite have as good a start.
There was a full start. The Abignales of 2 brothers of Giuseppe, the stroke man, was the dominant of them. They went through the roll call, asking each country that they're ready, and then the umpire says, "I will start you like this," and the bow guy. The Abignale brother went. His brother gave him such a filthy look, but they went storming out from the start of not us. We got left behind. We were up there for a while, but the fatigue from the day before had set in. I remember we didn't do a press conference, but met up with a couple of journalists, and one of them that was a little bit disabled and couldn't walk properly. And one of the questions he asked me, and I know him very well, and I know him personally very well. He's no longer with us anymore. He said, "How are your legs?" And I said, "They're in better shape than yours." At that time of year, you could get away with puns like that, which he thought was very funny. And it wasn't until we started racing that we realised of quite what fatigue that we had, even though that we were in control of the Cox's pair final. We won by just under a length in the end to the Romanian guys that we'd raced the year before. But my coach from later years of Jurgen Grobler was with the East German team there. And what we used to do is, after racing the Cox's pair, we used to go out for a session, And it wasn't about trying to get rid of the lactic acid. We always, because the cox pair, you're in those days was 50 kilos of cox. It's now 55 kilos of cox. Is that the boat is a lot heavier. That people have often asked me the difference between the two boats. There's not that much difference in speed. The world records were probably about 15 seconds difference over 2,000 meters. But in the cox's pair, you're gasping for breath. In the cox pair, you're never gasping for breath. It's just the legs that give up earlier. And so we used to go out on the day of the final of the cox's pair, get into the cox pair, that 24 hours of trying to get used to it. And we used to do lots of bursts. All that's doing is adding more and more lactate to the legs. We didn't know about lactate in those days. We just thought that was a good way of getting a heavy boat up and running. And Jurgen talks about of when he came over here and he said, when we saw you go out and do those bursts, we knew that we were going to beat you. And East Germany came second. I'm not convinced totally that it was a wrong way of doing it, but you learn from experiences, and we'd probably do it in a different way now.
Definitely would do it in a different way now, but hindsight is 2020. Good, interesting to bring
the difference is now is that you can't double up because there isn't a Cox Pairs event.
Yeah, that as well.
And there isn't a Cox Fours event, which at the Olympics that I won as well.
Yeah, the less events with Coxes, the better, because like you said, it's heavy. It's heavy and it's hard on the back. So between 1892, obviously East Germany was no more. So in terms of the rowing, like you've already said, such a dominant force. Was that something that you guys thought about? Was it like, great, we're going to have a sort of different competition now, or was that sort of not really something that factored? Obviously, part of that was why Jurgen then came over to the UK.
Well, both the East Germany and Soviet Union, so it's like two of the top biggest three players at that time.
Yeah, but the Soviet Union weren't really getting those good results. They took rowing to the Eastern Bloc countries. We taught them how to row in the first place. In St. Petersburg, a club called the English Rowing Club, and that rowing was spread by the Russian coaches going to all the other countries, but East Germany being sort of more methodical and scientific about how they went around of things, did things better than the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union throughout the whole of my career and then moving into Russia weren't really a force. They used to win one or two gold medals, but they weren't dominated like East Germany did, or the Romanians a few years later.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only brief time when they had dominating was when Mike was over there coaching as well. So 92, obviously you then moved into the pair with an Eton-Oxford lad. Again, similarities to Bushnell and Bernal, with one of you being working class, the other one being from a different background. I think obviously as a rowing world, we still live with that, or a lot of people think of rowing as an elitist sport. I think the previous BBC head said that they didn't take the Oxford-Cambridge race back on because they felt that it was an elitist thing. Obviously, in a time before you, we know definitely there was, certainly at Henley, times when people were or weren't allowed to row on the course because of their background. At that point in your career, did you feel like that was something you dealt with, or did you not really? Was it not really something that came up?
It was never really an issue to me because that won quite a lot of races and beating them most of the time. It was never an issue really. I think it was more for other people in some ways. What really annoys me about rowing with Matthew is that it was 1990, the World Championships were in Tasmania, that I was rowing with a guy called Simon Beresford, who was in the Cox's Four that finished fourth at the Solar Games. We went to the World Championships the year before, and again, doubling up because stupid people like me think we can do that. We came second in the Cox's pair and we came fifth in the Cox pair. And so then we thought we'd really got to focus on one boat, not two. which then was the Cox's pair. But Simon got out single sculling because we used to train single scullers from after having 2 or 3 weeks off after the World Championships up till sort of Christmas, New Year, and then we would then get back rowing. He was out in his single scull and got hit by another boat, damaged his back, and was never really the same athlete the times that I was rowing with him. We rowed all season, weren't getting very good results. They were okay, but not dominant. And the team doctor pulled him out at Henley, which was a big disappointment for me. I love racing at Henley. Team doctor happened to be my wife, so it makes it even tougher. And that he had to sit out the rest of the season. He did get back onto the team and did compete at the next Olympics, but that's where I started rowing. There was because of the Cold War, of what was going on, the end of the Cold War, that there was a Goodwill Games, and rowing was introduced into the Goodwill Games. I missed the first one, but rowed in the second one. That was 1990 in Seattle, and that because Simon had been injured, that they got the 2 fours, the Cox and Cox's fours, to race in this race in the 8 and their fours, but one of them had a back injury, so I stepped in there. We raced at Lucerne and won the 8 at Lucerne. The only time I've raced internationally in an 8. Again, that story about somebody falling off the seat. I had to swap sides. I was rowing bow side and had to swap back to stroke side. Off the start, somebody caught a crab. That was me as well. But we did go on to win that race as well. We went to the Goodwill Games, came across Matt Pinson. We had quite a good understanding with each other. That we were in different crews in the fours there, but we raced together in the 8. And while we were out there, again, it was down to me, is that the decision, because the World Championships in Tasmania, the season was a lot longer, and that we had time to adjust our team. And so after coming back from the Goodwill Games, is that the decision was, do I row in the Cox's 4 and try to improve that boat that was doing quite well, or do I take somebody from the Cox's 4 into the pair? And I looked at it and I thought, well, there's a very, very good East German pair, but there isn't a lot of depth behind that. In the Cox's 4s, there was quite a lot of depth in that. So I convinced Matthew that we should do the pair. He was up for it. We went to the trials, won the trials, so we were able to do that. It was a late trials introduced from that. Again, thinking that at worst we would come second. And as soon as you start thinking about that, we came third. Another of 2 outstanding rowers that did come from the Soviet Union with the Pimenov brothers. And I beat the Pimenov brothers every time I raced them, apart from that World Championships where they beat us. And Matthew and I stood on the podium and we said to each other, we're not going to lose another race. And we went 5 years without losing a race, of having the disappointment of having a bronze medal put around our neck.
Was that in 1990? Was Mike still in charge?
Mike had just gone to Canada. So Pat Sweeney, my former Cox, was coaching us.
And then Jurgen took over sort of the year after that.
And Jurgen came over after that World Championships. That was when you talk about these German dominance, is that that World Championships, the best rowing nation was East Germany. The second best nation was West Germany. And you're thinking, God, what's this? What's what now they're going to be combined? What it's going to be like? They performed reasonably well, but not as well as their individual countries, and got weaker and weaker almost year after year from that. Women's sculling dominated for a while, but that slipped away.
Yeah.
And Germany are struggling rowing-wise completely, which is sad to see, really.
So there's an interesting thing we brushed over slightly. You mentioned swapping sides. Typically, obviously, rowers pick one side and stick with it, but you've been single sculling. You've won 2 Olympics on stroke side, and then you've won 3 on bow side. What sort of drove that decision, and how did you find sort of the technical adaptation? I know when we spoke to Tim Foster, he says if you can do either means neither, but obviously for you, that doesn't apply.
There's only 2 people that have won Olympic gold medals rowing on stroke side and bow side, and they're both British. James Cracknell being one, and me being the other. Again, I like of being first at things in some ways, but it's just a logical decision. Is that I chose Simon Beresford to row with after Seoul, and he rowed on stroke side. So there was a difference in performance of ability when we started rowing with each other. So should the person with all the strength stay at that strength, and I decided to give Simon more of a chance, it's better if I swap over. And the challenge of trying to be the first person to win on either side, I would have liked to have done it bow side, stroke side, and single sculling. But I wasn't that good, unfortunately, especially in the single.
Well, your record in the diamonds would suggest otherwise, but that's for another time.
Only two out of 3.
Only 2 out of 18, 19 Henley wins.
Yeah, you got that wrong. There's 20.
Oh, there you go.
all open events. No, none of the minor stuff. Hey, Jack.
I'd love to get into Jurgen next. Obviously, not just a change of head coach for you, but change of coach, like you said, being involved in Marlow very early. Mike had been a coach of yours for a really long time. What was that like going into that sort of new system? And I guess it's a common thing that a lot of athletes have had to deal with. And what advice might you give people who have that change in a coach and how to make the most of it?
It was a difficult process in the whole process in some ways. Is that if you look at the whole of British sport and especially Olympic sport, is that we weren't doing very well. Is that of up until the Atlanta Games, is that the 4 games before that, Great Britain won 5 gold medals in total. You go back before that, it was even less. So we weren't really a country of producing many Olympic gold medals across the board. And rowing has always been one of the sports that we have done of quite well in. And so when Jurgen came over, he was really the catalyst in some ways, even though that Mike Sprackling had sort of put in the legwork in some ways in Seoul, is that the team as a whole did really well. We had more 4th places than we'd ever had before, as well as a gold and a bronze at those games. And so the athletes started to believe that they were knocking on the door of winning medals. Then Mike was an amateur coach, and he was offered a role to coach out in Canada to be paid, and he had to take that opportunity. That from almost day one of senior international rowing for myself, I was with Mike, and together we'd sort of have done that path. Even though that we're still very, very good friends now, is that we probably have pushed the limits that we could do together of moving the sport forward within this country. And then, as we touched on of Pat Sweeney taking over the coaching role, with Simon, I was rowing with Simon Beresford, which didn't work out very well. But also, again, as I touched on earlier, Mike's training was very, very intense. That with him, the work that you did, you came off the water thinking you couldn't row another stroke. When Jurgen came over, it was boring, mile after mile after mile, and you could always do more. Because there wasn't the fatigue, the lactic acid that was being built up through the way that Mike first have coached and what Jurgen brought over. But that basis that Mike did is that we had some pretty good athletes, and he was brought over to coach at Leander to start with. It was Leander Club that brought him in. I was part of the interview panel. He talks about we decided that we would interview him while Henry Royal Regatta was on. He was picked up in a Rolls Royce from the airport. How embarrassing can it be? He remembers coming down Remenham Hill into of Leander, and he asked the driver of how many people lived in the house on the side there as you're coming down the hill. They said, "Oh, it's just one little old lady that lives in the house there." He couldn't understand that, because where he'd come from is that it was blocks of flats normally. Of being a successful coach in East Germany is that you had more perks than the average of person within the country. And he was blown away. He always wanted to come to Henry Royal Regatta. It was something that an East German crew came a few years before I was rowing, and he was remembers that, and it always wanted to come. He didn't get on that trip, and so to come during the regatta was pretty special. But when he came over, because we talked about what the British system is now and how the sort of production line it is, again, that's what the East German system was like. So of being the top elite coach of East German rowing is that you don't have the production line of the athletes coming in from the junior setup. They didn't really do under 23s. You'll be giving the talent all the time. So my concern was, would he be flexible enough to be able to adjust to the Western world? Within a few weeks of him coming over, he said, yeah, Steve, I need a meeting with the sports minister. And I laughed at him. I said, why do you want a meeting with the sports minister? He said, there's some fundamental changes that we need to make. I said, well, the sports minister's not going to do anything. It's a figurehead position. They don't do anything. And he just couldn't understand that. In East Germany, the sports minister was a cabinet position. They had power to do whatever needed to be done. They did a lot of wrong things with anti-doping, and some of that has been proven through the Stasi files. But you've got to admire their of culture. The first time I went to East Germany was in '84 in the four that went on to the Olympics, and we were chaperoned by a past athlete, Olympic champion several times over, and of course we quizzed them on everything, and of trying to find out why East Germans rowing was so good. And he said that of when we were Germany, an East and a West, for us to compete at the Olympics, we had to prove ourselves better than the West Germans, because it was the West German system of selection. And so you had to be a lot better to get selected. And when the wall went up in 60, is that gave them the opportunity. And as a country, they were motivated. They wanted to show that they were as good, if not better, than anybody else. And so they put huge amounts of effort into it. A guy called Harold Yarling that won 2 Olympic gold medals. If it wasn't for the boycott of 84, he would have been the stroke of the Cox Four, going for his 3rd Olympic gold medal when I was going for my first. Harold's no longer with us, unfortunately, but I got to know him really well. And it was good sort of seeing of his thoughts on East Germany and how disappointed they were of not being able to go to the 84 Olympics. But this guy in Berlin, when we went over to race, he said it was just about motivation. Well, sorry, going back to Harold. Harold was in a shopping mall, and being quite a big lad, some scouts asked him, will you row? And of course he said yes. And that's how his career started. And as a nation, they felt trodden by the West Germans. And that's where their motivation was. And the guy said to us, we wanted to show our strength. there's two ways of doing that. We could start another war. That would be stupid. Or we could show it within sport. And that was their motivation. So to have a coach coming out of that system to the Western world, it's not going to work. I felt it wasn't going to work. It was great. Leander took the punt at it, but Jurgen, within weeks, just got it and understood of how the Western world works. Or near enough. I remember we went to the trials where we got beaten by Johnny and Greg Searle. And selection policy in East German was that if you lost your trials, that was it. You weren't going because they had strength in depth. And I had to explain to Jurgen, that doesn't quite happen. When we only win 5 gold medals at Olympic Games in all sports, if we've got top athletes that are not doing very well, you get another chance. You've got a chance to prove yourself. You're not good enough to go. And so when we lost the trials of that particular year of 92, is that we were given a chance to prove ourselves, and we did. We managed to get the selection of the boat. But Jurgen just sort of understood through his coaching experience and his ambition and the way that he'd learnt so much from the East German system and how that could adapt. And he came over for me personally just at the right time because of the intense coaching that I was under with Mike, is that even though I was willing to do it and enjoyed doing it, when he left, I took the foot off the gas. So Simon struggled with that a bit because I wasn't quite as motivated as I was before. I was ticking over, but of not pushing myself. If Jurgen could come over the year before, I don't think it would have worked with us because I wasn't ready to put that commitment back in. And when Jurgen came over and started coaching me, Matthew was doing the boat race and spending quite a lot of time in Oxford, the studies. So we only got together every now and again in the pair. So it was mainly Jurgen and I in the singles, me single sculling and he coaching me. So we got this rapport. But I remember thinking when he did come over, I think, right, okay, 2 years before the Olympics, I'm going to follow everything that he says and see what results we get. And if it doesn't work, then I'm going to go back of all the things I learned with Mike and go back to the old way to try and win Olympic gold medal. I remember of doing the 8th head of the river, Leander crew, and with Mike, it was always practicing race pace. You always practice race pace. And we did no practice of race pace for the head. And saying, Jurgen, we've got to do something. We've got to practice we've got the lightweights up our bums and they're going to be racing 36 strokes per minute and you've got us paddling around at 18. How the hell are we going to get into that rhythm? Oh, don't worry. He gave in and he let us do a 3-minute piece from the start to Barnes Bridge. And that's the only race pace stuff that we did. On race day, we settled into a nice rhythm, about 34, rode away from the lightweights very comfortably and won easily. And you think, okay. 2 weeks later, when the Sculler's Head used to be close to of the 8th head of the river, and even though I always wanted to be a single sculler, I never had a great record at the Sculler's Head of the river. I only won it twice, and the last time I did it was with Jurgen coaching me. And I was always got a lot of natural strength, and always had very fast boat speed. And so that I remember him saying, just as I went out onto the water, yeah, Steve, first half, do nothing, absolutely do nothing, just paddle. When you get to Hammersmith, yeah, that's when you go. I'm thinking, you idiot, what? And so I sort of half did what he did, and then pushed on from Hammersmith and won the Sculler's Head for the second time. Tried many times and lost it most times. The regatta, the head result one year got it wrong of the tide times, probably a year that I would have won. finished 16th. Carl Smith started another lightweight that started behind me, ended up being in the 30s because they got the timetable wrong and started us when the tide was still coming in. Normally when you go around Chiswick Bridge and you drift pretty quickly and you're not drifting anywhere, you know that there's a problem. And they made it very clear that if any of the top scullers didn't start in their position, they would be disqualified. So we had no choice of going off. Who was it won that year, Eric? God, the one of Billy Mason's of guys, he started right the way back and won quite comfortably.
Is it Boris?
Sorry,
Boris or Hugh Pelham?
no, it wasn't either of them. He was on the team. Mine goes a blank of his name. Sorry, whoever you are. The Winfield Sculls used to be 10 days after that. And I said to him, are you going to enter the Winfield Sculls? Thinking, all right, I'm going to get him back. And he says, don't be stupid. So didn't do it. But Jurgen's training. So when you got that, Matthew did the boat race, obviously around that sort of time as well. Then we started rowing back in the pair. And the same principle was that we'll give you a season. And we started winning race after race after race. And you're thinking, well, okay, perhaps he does know quite a lot about this. Perhaps he can adjust to the Western system. For a few years of me, especially doing probably the best that I was doing within the sport under Jurgen. Difference between Mike and Jurgen, I sense the question coming, is that Mike was, as I say, always very intense. It was always everything. It was always practicing race pace of summer and winter. And Jurgen was all about of you're building to the first race. Whatever you do at the first race, the second race has got to be better. So that story I told a little bit earlier about doing the Coxton-Cox's pair is that would never have happened under Jurgen. We wouldn't have broke the world record 2 weeks before the World Championships. You would have done your best result at the World Championships. And that was the key. And through the whole of the period with Jurgen is that we always performed best at the last race of the year.
So there's a question from me here really about Jurgen is a coach. He's never actually rowed himself. And you talk a lot about the physical preparation and the endurance and the power that you need to put in the boat. But there's obviously the technical aspect, which is probably half of the battle here in rowing. Was there any sentiment with regards to, the fact that Jurgen's never been in a boat when you were taking advice from him? I mean, how did you view that? Because at the time that he came in, you've obviously had 2 Olympic golds, so he knew something.
Yeah, Jurgen had done a little bit of rowing when he was at college.
Okay.
Or so he says. We tried to get him on a boat a few times and we never, ever did. We got him to do the indoor World Championships east in Wilston that used to run Concept 2 here in the UK. The rules of going to the World Indoors is that if you went, you had to race. And so even the coaches, if you went, you didn't get a free trip.
Okay.
He did okay. Matthew and I gave him a very hard time, sitting by the side of him and shouting at him. But Jurgen, in some ways, you would call him a trainer. Mike Spratlin, you would call him a coach. Mike being a lightweight before there were lightweights, he had to be technically better than anybody else. He had to be fitter than anybody else to be able to compete in the open category. And Jurgen, in East Germany, to be a coach, you went to university for 5 years to study every aspect of sport in general, not just rowing, every sport. So you've got the background of the sprinters and what they go through, as well as the endurance athletes and crossover. You've got all that knowledge, all locked away from that. And that's where he could adapt to whatever situation and make an improvement in most people that he coached.
It's interesting you say that even before '92, that maybe the will to win had waned a little, and that maybe you got lucky with the time that Jurgen came. Although I think you probably made the best of the situation, and obviously that was really successful. After that, after '92, having 3 medals, and then also after '96, famously saying something in the boat. What sort of kept you going, or when the motivation to keep going lagged, what did you use to get yourself back there?
If you do well at Olympics or go to Olympics and you want to go to another one, is that you make one decision. You have of 4 to 6 weeks off. We tend to have in rowing after Olympics, and you decide if you're going to carry on or not. If you're going to carry on, you make that decision. Then your path is set. You know what training you're going to do. You know which direction you're going to go. You know where you're going to race and the whole process. Yes, it's not a piece of cake. There's ups and downs as there is in life in general. But that decision's been made. You made that one decision, and it's now part of a team working their way through that. I always thought I'd go to 3 Olympics. Moscow, I would have been an 18-year-old, still a junior. Then to LA, hoping to be in a final, and then the Olympic gold medal in the single scull was going to be of Seoul in '88, and then that was it. Once I realised I wasn't a very good single sculler, and was getting good results in sweep rowing, is that I've stayed with that. And then you're thinking, okay, what am I going to do now? Still pretty young. The sport is changing, becoming more professional, even though there was no prize money or appearance money, as there still isn't now. But there is also no lottery funding at that time as well. And you're thinking, do I really want to work for a living? I'm bringing in some income from appearances and stuff like that, surviving. Fortunately, married a Olympic rower as well, that only went to 1 Olympics, finished 5th, but was a doctor, so bringing in quite a good income from that side of it. And so it was an easy decision to carry on. The difficult one was after of Barcelona, is that then we had our first child, and then as the male, that was pretty tough for me. Because you marry somebody, they know the lifestyle that you lead. They know the sacrifices they put in, especially when they're an athlete themselves at that level. That you know what you're letting yourself in for. You bring a child into the world, they have no choice who their parents are, of what lifestyle they're in. And that was heavy on me. So I had to find some more income, some stable income, to be able to make sure that the family that we were starting at that time doesn't look back at their parents and think, God, you gave us a shit upbringing. From that, fortunately, I think we've brought our kids up pretty well, or my wife brought up the kids very well. It's a shame that she's not here. She's out with her friends tonight, but she's heard all this rubbish before. But I never credit her. So here I am credited again now for one of bringing up an amazing 3 kids.
Oh, it's on record.
She'll never listen to it, so it's not a problem. And that of helping me through the latter part of my career was a huge sacrifice, an effort that she put in, and the sacrifice that she's still putting in now to of the British team being so successful as they are now. And I think one of the reasons that our team is so successful is our support team is second to none than any other country. We've got great athletes, don't taking that away from them, but the support and the structure that they get, our British team, and the lottery funding helps that in some ways, because now they are professionals. From when Anne first started, were volunteers.
Think about all those other athletes in those unfortunate countries where they don't have that kind of support. Imagine being quite close to going to your 5th Olympics, and then someone puts their hand through the window. And what do you do then when you don't have that great of a network behind you?
Well, if you try to jump into the boat race crew after being at a different university just to do the boat race, end up of getting kicked out of that university, but end up living in the old boathouse. And Tim Foster was very flamboyant. Even when he was at Oxford, he always wore purple, not blue. The thing that really upsets me about of that whole process, James Cracknell was devastated from it and couldn't forgive Tim at all for doing that. I was more pissed off that we didn't get invited to the party because it was of where he was lodging in the boathouse, and he was dancing away and threw his arm back and put it through a pane glass window. And cut the tendons on the back of his hand. Went to the Radcliffe. It was an Australian surgeon that he was under, and he didn't tell him that we were planning to go to Australia to beat the awesome foursome that had won the previous 2 Olympics in their event on their own water. He might have not done such a good job. But reality is that you look at Tim. Tim was the smallest of the 4 of us. He was the weakest physically of the 4 of us. You think if you can replace anybody, Tim's the one to replace. He was out of the boat for a few months, and we replaced him with a pretty good athlete. Ended up winning an Olympic gold medal himself, but it just didn't work for us. That we got beaten quite badly at one international regatta. Without Tim, and then we realised that actually it's the makeup of the 4 of us, that very different personalities, very different work of lives in some ways, but the makeup, and it was odd in some ways, because if you think Matthew and I of being the best pair in the world, you would think keeping us together as a unit would be the best lineup. It didn't work. We had to be split up. And where would you put your biggest, strongest person? In the 3 seat of a 4? No, he's sitting at 2. Tim's in that seat, but it worked.
Yeah, he was a bit of a wizard.
Was there a sense that you wanted to go back to the 4 for your last Olympics, or maybe you looked at lineups of other countries and thought Pear's not the one to bring this 5th one home?
I had decisions. I made all the decisions of the directions through my whole career of the directions I went into, and almost telling the coaches and British Rowing of what I was doing. Apart from that one, Matthew always thought I was going to stop after Atlanta, and that even though that Jurgen thought I'd carry on, I wasn't sure. It took me a couple of weeks, maybe 6 or 7 hours, before I made the decision I was going to go, but didn't tell anybody. I phoned Jurgen up a week before training started, and of 97, after that games in Atlanta. And I said, I want to come back. I want to carry on for another games, but I need more time off. And I said, I need 2 more weeks, so 8 weeks instead of the 6 weeks. And he said, yeah, you've got the 1st of December. If you're not back by the 1st of December, you're not coming back. So I took him to his word. I took another 4 weeks off and came back on the 1st of December. But of Matthew didn't know, because I hadn't spoken to Matthew about it. And first day of training, Matthew turned up, and Jurgen said to Matthew, Steve is going to carry on. He says, no, he's not. And I was out doing a function somewhere, driving the car. He got straight on the phone, rang me up, and he says, Jurgen's telling me you're carrying on. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. And he said, right, if we're carrying on, we're not rowing in the pair. We're going to do something different. Yeah, okay, whatever you want to do. And so the decision of doing the 4 was Matthew's decision, not mine.
Wow.
The only boat I wouldn't have done is the 8.
Why is that?
Came to a school that never rowed 8s. Through most of my career, never really rowed 8s. I've won every open event that at Henley that you can do, apart from one, the Grand. And I'm very, very satisfied that I've never done it. Pete Thomas was our team doctor before my wife became the team doctor, was an Olympic athlete, and he always ribs me and he said, oh, you've never won the Grand, have you? And he's won it twice. And I said, yeah, Pete, I've never lost it either, but you have.
Oh, that's great.
So obviously between 96 and 2000, you dealt with a lot of other stuff and health issues and all that kind of stuff. You still got the gold. Spoilers, sorry. After that, I know we spoke a little bit before about legacy and stuff. At that point, obviously knowing that you couldn't do another one, what did it feel like then? And maybe looking back now, sort of 25 years later, does it feel any different to you?
Well, I think the biggest change in all British sport, and especially Olympic sport, was Atlanta, 96. That's where I talked about before, we only won 5 gold medals at the games before that, and less before that, of going back before the wars, when we won multiple gold medals. The governments accepted 5 gold medals for the investment they put in. It didn't worry them from that. But the 1 gold medal that we won in Atlanta was the changing point. Lottery had just come on board just before that, but it was for capital projects. Maidenhead was a benefit of that around that time. But it wasn't for elite sports. It wasn't for athletes. It wasn't for the support team from that. And that 1 gold medal that I do have tucked away in my pocket here from Atlanta was the turning point. John Major was our Prime Minister. And when we came back from those games, that he decided that lottery would change. You can pass it around. I think a few people in the audience have seen it before, but pass it around. I don't mind if it goes missing. I've got 4 others. But the reality is that it's not gold either. It's supposed to be silver with gold plate. And in fact, the Barcelona one had an implant in it. It was supposed to have 13.5 grams of gold in it. The implant started to come away from the medal, and sent it went down to a well-known jewellers in London that put it back together for me. While it was there, they did some research on it, and there's no gold in it. And it's supposed to be silver, and there's no silver in it either. So the bronze are bronze, the silver are silver, and the golds are a fake. But I would like it back. I bet there's a thing. Going back to the point is that was the point that athletes got decent grants in work terms, peanuts, are very educated, as the sport of rowing tends to be, and we expect our athletes to live on a relatively small grant, but it's much better than it was any other time within sport. I didn't think it was going to make a big difference. I felt that we had some really good athletes in rowing, but probably some of them were better suited for other sports. And so our screening process in some ways wasn't right. We got a silver medal in Moscow. The Soviet Union's got the bronze. The East Germans got the gold. And I can remember the camera panning across, and you see the East Germans, and they're all one shape, very athletic. It goes through to the British, and there's probably a difference in height of probably about a foot from the tallest to the shortest within that, and that doesn't include the cocks. And then it went to the Soviet Union again. It's the same sort of shape. Is that every sport there is a size and stature that you need, and rowing is about long levers. It's levering the boat past the length of stroke that you can row. It took me 10 years to work that one out. I was always a strong athlete and thought it was about power. Power helps a little bit, especially getting the boat up and running, but it's a leverage sport. It's where that blade goes in the water and you're levering the boat past that position. And where I found that out wasn't from any rowing coach, and I've had two of the best rowing coaches the world has ever seen. It was from a swimmer. He said, when we swim, we go out, we reach a bit of water, we grab hold of that bit of water and pull ourselves past it. Oh, okay. I've got to row longer, not about of the power that goes into it. But that was the games that made the big difference. I didn't think it was going to make the differences because of not having the right size of athletes in the right sports. But I was totally wrong. It made a huge difference going up from winning 5 gold medals at the 5 games before Atlanta, only winning 1 at Atlanta, and then winning, 11 in Sydney. And then went up from there. Once I retired, the rowing team did better, and British sport did better as well.
And one last question I'd like to ask just before we get into a few of the quicker questions. Obviously, since then, you've stayed involved in rowing. You've had a massive effect in rowing and sport in general, Henley Royal Regatta and all those other things. I don't think you ever coached. Did you ever think about doing it? Or just never fancied it?
I think that I loved the sport when I was doing it. Through you go back to the 60s, there was a lot of people that rowed and then went into coaching. Mm-hmm. As the time commitment became more, is that I wanted to get away from the sport. Not that I hated the sport. I didn't want to be there more than when I was an athlete. And as a coach, you tend to be there more as an athlete. I have coached. I coached James Cracknell as a junior, got him through to the junior final trials with a guy called Nick Clary that we rowed out of Marlow. They went on to win a gold medal that year at the Junior World Championships. I've coached Oxford and Cambridge at different times. For just a few weeks when they rotated it round a little bit. I think I've got a reasonable eye. I think that I could have been an okay coach, but it never really sort of materialised in that way. I became the high performance director of Chinese rowing and ended up doing quite a lot of coaching out there because there just wasn't the number of coaches to be able to get there and make an impact. I've thought about going into coaching, but again, it's the same processes that I'm getting a bit old now. And I'd rather be doing other things than spending all my life by the river.
Like you said, the only thing that takes as much time as rowing is coaching rowing.
Is there anything in particular that you wanted to achieve with the Chinese project and things that you're most proud of?
Well, took a country that had good women rowers. The lightweights had some good results over the years. But to be the first of crew of a heavyweight men's crew to win the World Championships, which was pretty special to be part of as the high performance director, and Tom Kay, another lightweight multiple world champion, also rowed at Marlow at the start of his career. Not to keep mentioning about Marlow when we're at Maidenhead. Of doing that, if there wasn't the pandemic, they probably would have won the Olympics. They went off the ball a little bit, but it was still the first Asian crew, heavyweight men's crew, to win a medal at the Olympics. Very proud about that, of what we're doing. It was tough lifestyle of living out there. Very different way of working. Is that your bosses want to bring experts in from around the world to make their teams better and to teach them the right way of doing things. But really what they want to do is to get you over there so they can say that we've got the best in the world and then still do it their way. And even though that you can say, well, you're not getting the results, but sad to say that the Chinese team at the Tokyo Games was ahead of the British on the medal table. And I think I had a part to play with that on both sides. Probably fortunate I left China because most of my bosses are now in prison. And the Chinese team have drifted away, and the British team are back to where they should be. Disappointing that they always seem to get beaten by the Netherlands, but the two countries that spend the most money get the best results.
Yeah, typically how that goes. Did you ever have the sense when you were obviously in charge of China that you might meet Jurgen on a start line somewhere and then had anything to say to him? Maybe you would have pushed your bike in front of him at the start. I don't know if...
I've passed his cross a few times. Obviously he was being quite disappointed of how the British team was performing at those times. And when the Chinese quad won the World Championships, we were watching in the same room on the TV. Jurgen always used to find the TV room, so he never went close to the bank because you only see a snapshot of it. He wanted to see every stroke, and that we were sitting in other parts of the room, and you could sense the disappointment that the British crew, and he wasn't even coaching the women. It wasn't his side, but the disappointment. And I thought, is he going to come up and congratulate us on that success? He didn't. I went over to him, and he did then take the lead and congratulate it. But without him and his coaching methods or training methods, I wouldn't have been able to pass on the expertise that I got. Again, without Mike Sprackling, you can look at you could argue that the two best rowing coaches in the world on results. Jurgen is the best coach, trainer that in any sport at the Olympic Games, not rowing, in any sport, to have him as one of your coaches. Mike has done it in a number of different countries, not just one, not just two, but a number of coaches wherever he went. And so you could argue that they were the two best coaches. There are one or two that would be upset about that, but you can safely say that both coaches were in the top five of coaches that the world has ever seen. And then you think of what I achieved with the four originally, then with Andy, and then with Matt, and thinking we should have been even better than we were because we had the best coaches as well. So I think we could have been better athletes in some ways. Tokyo, where I've got mixed loyalties. You get passionate for the team, the crew that you're coaching, and to see how that of the changeover of chair at British Rowing, of the way that we went through chief executives, the way that we went through the performance directors, the way that we got rid of Jurgen as the best coach at the Olympics ever. Of course, everyone can't go on forever. But the year before that, they get rid of Paul Thompson. Paul Thompson as the best women's coach on medals that ever been seen within the sport of rowing. And we get rid of both of them before Tokyo. It was like, oh, we're going to do really badly at Tokyo. Let's scrap that. And that was sad to see. Of being involved in winning the first 5 gold medals since Bert won his in 48, and we win gold medal every year, and then multiple gold medals every year. To see not winning a gold medal was so disappointing. That we had the capability we had 2 boats that could have won. We wouldn't have been surprised if those 2 boats had won at the games, but it didn't happen. Sometimes you have to have the disappointment to bounce back, and the British team has bounced back.
A question on that, really, because the men's four in Tokyo, as we know, they were going for gold, and almost to the point where they blacked out before they could cross the finish line, and then whatever happened. When you were racing in the Olympic final, would you have almost which one? Would you have almost preferred not getting a medal than getting a silver? Was gold so important, or you just wanted to have a good race and you just loved being in the boat so much?
I raced to win right from day one. That I think one of my strengths is that when you've won something, that's done and dusted. You're looking at the next one. And so where the journalists were building up in Sydney is that, Steve Redgrave's going for 5 gold medals. He's always wanted 5 gold medals. No, I wanted 1. It came earlier than I thought from it, that I was always looking forward and not backwards. And you have to adapt, you have to change. You can't still be doing the same things as we were training for the 84 Olympics in LA. You look at the training that we're doing now to what the athletes are now preparing to do for LA again, as that cycle's coming around, completely and utterly different. There's not one aspect from that. In pretty good conditions in the Cox 4, we did 6:18. I've been faster than a pair than that when I was rowing. The pairs have moved on since then. 2 Kiwi guys went pretty quick.
And 2 Croatian.
The Kiwi still got the world record, and the Olympic record. The thing is about Olympic records, all records come and go, but you want your records to stay around. So Atlanta, when we did 6:20, we'd been faster than that before, but 6:20, you've got one day in 4 years that time stands. And then whoever's trying it in games after games, they've got one day to try and beat that. We got through to 2012, but then 2 Kiwis in the heat went down and did 6:08?
Yeah.
If Jurgen came over, he came over and brought the gold medal targets, and he came out and the Cox's pairs target that he brought out and talked to everybody was 6:22. At that time, the world record was 6:28, and people laughed. You're joking. How can people do that? In that, when Andy and I broke the world record before the World Championships in 87, in that time, we did of 6:24. So 2 seconds off that without anybody rowing alongside you. So when Jurgen set that time, I knew it was possible, and that's why I could buy into it. Most people took still a long time before they could buy into the gold medal targets and the process of doing it.
I guess you had so much belief in yourself that you thought if anyone can do it.
Somebody told me that somebody's going to do 6:08, I would have laughed at them, and now it's been done.
What about 2 guys breaking 6 minutes in a double? That's another pretty incredible achievement that I don't think is going to get broken for a while.
Yeah, never say never. The first world record I had was in the 4 in 84. That's when international regattas were 2 separate regattas, one on the Saturday, one on the Sunday. The East Germans competed at they weren't allowed to go to the 84 Olympics. So I was racing Harold Yarding, I talked about earlier, and we beat them. We beat them by a couple of seconds, and we broke the record of I think it was 6:05 for a Cox 4 at that time. And everyone said, "God, that's amazing. No, that's just incredible time." And Mike didn't let us race on the Sunday. So we had this world record on the Saturday. The conditions were slightly better the next day. Our world record that was going to stand for years and years and years got beaten within 24 hours. So never say never.
It's very good. Okay, let's move on to some quick fire round questions.
I don't do quick fire very well. I'm good at waffling.
They're quick questions, but never quick answers. Tom, I'll let you start.
I'll try and do the opposite to what Crossie's done then and give you quick answers.
So the one I ask is, if you could travel back in time to the age you were when you first fell in love with rowing, what advice would you give that young lad?
Don't think I ever fell in love with it. Advice is that I'll dream big and have no barriers. Go for it. that life is relatively short. Your sporting career is very, very, very short. Even though I pushed it to its limits to a degree, dream big and go for it in whatever field.
Love it.
Love that. If you were to repeat one race or one event again, either to get a different result or to relive that experience, which one would it be and why?
Simon Skulls, 86, in the final against another lightweight. I seem to have raced quite a lot of lightweights. A guy called El Tang. I said a bit earlier that I always had a fast start. And so I used to take the lead quite a lot, whatever boat I was rowing in, but especially in the single. And I led by a length by the end of the island. I thought, okay, as you can do it, Henley, because it's only one-on-one, is that I've pushed on. So I led by 3 lengths by the barrier, thinking this is done and dusted, it's all over. And he just kept going. One of my rivals, who's a very good friend of mine now, Chris Bailey, was the single sculler before me. And he knew, I didn't know how El Tang raced. And he wasn't explosive. He wasn't of that sudden speed, but he doesn't give up. He just keeps on going. So it didn't worry him being 3 lengths down. Time we got up to Rowing Club, he'd overtaken me. So that was disappointing. So I would do the same race again, lead by a length at the island, and then sit on that length.
It's very good. Good answer. Top 3.
And my best sculling race of a month after that race, when rowing was in the Commonwealth Games, and won the single sculls at the Commonwealth Games, and that still makes me reigning Commonwealth champion.
Oh, good one.
That was my last sculling race as well.
Top 3 favourite places that you've rowed?
Lucerne is always at the top. Everyone believes that's the sort of the rowing mecca in some ways. If you were going to choose one venue to row for the rest of your life and compete, would be Lucerne. I have raced there in very bad conditions and very unfair conditions, but it's just picturesque. I think the best about Lucerne is the beer and the ice creams down by the stream in Lucerne. You get out of your hotel, you can walk to have a coffee or an ice cream, and you can walk to the venue, and it's just beautiful. That would be number 1.
The view at the start line is quite interesting as well.
Number 2 would be I would like to have raced at Carapiro. Only been to New Zealand once when they had the World Championships. Travel all the way to New Zealand for your first time. You spend 4 days there. But I would have liked to have raced there. Number 3, there's a lake somewhere that I haven't found yet. It would have been quite nice.
Nottingham.
We all love going to Nottingham. Favourite place in the world.
I've got one question which is sort of not rowing related, but from the general population that doesn't know rowing, I guess maybe the first time they got introduced to you was on a motor TV show called Top Gear. We obviously know that some of these shows are scripted, and perhaps there was some question of maybe what they've done, whether that was just an act for the cameras. Can you tell us what actually happened? I think a lot of people would love to hear that story.
I had my own charitable trust when I stopped rowing. I pledged that I'd try and raise £5 million in 5 years for children's causes. It was tough going, but we got there. And was in the process of Sport Relief, which I helped to set up. The first meeting about Sport Relief was in my lounge at home. The chief executive of Current Relief was Kevin Cahill. He came to me and we came up with the idea of Sport Relief, even though it didn't get going for 2 years after that. So I've been always heavily involved in Comet Relief. We used to do challenges in the last few years on Red Nose Day, all sporting related. So it was an obvious thing to do, and that they were taking over the running of the charitable trust as I was winding down from of hitting the targets that we wanted to do. And they had this idea of doing a Top Gear stunt on somebody's garden, and never really found someone to do it on. Kevin remembered my house and what the garden was like, and they decided they would do it on my house. I knew nothing about it at all. That my wife agreed that they could do it. We still have arguments about it now. I still haven't seen the program, so I don't know what went out in it. I know what happened on the day. I've been in London the morning. It was a year on from of launching the Sporting Giants program, building up for 2012. And I went on to another meeting, and then went to IMG, which was managing me at the time. And then my PA that's still with me now, Melanie Holmes, who was also a rower, a lightweight international, that she come down because I was driven into London first of all. She came down. She was in one of the meetings and was driving back. I had a very heated conversation on the charitable trust with Comic Relief on the phone driving home, and Melanie was driving, but she was also texting, which she shouldn't have been doing. And when I came off the phone, we were relatively close to being back at home. And I said, "But who are you texting?" And she said, "Oh, just Adam," which is her husband, which I rode as a junior with, and still reigning Commonwealth champion with him in a Coxfall. And so that I said, "Well, I'll take the phone. I'll speak." No, it's not a problem. And my first thoughts is she's having an affair with somebody. And then we got back into Marlow Bottom, where I live. As we got to our road, there's a low loader truck with a digger on it. I'm thinking, there's no building sites around here. Why is that there? We drove up, and I've got a long drive before we get to the house. And my dad's car is parked in the land that I don't own by the side of it. I'm thinking, that's a bit odd. Why is my dad parked there? Went up a bit further, and there's some caterpillar tracks going across the grass. I've had problems with my septic tank. And I thought, good old dad, he's being a builder, he's been sorting out the problem. And that's when I'm surprised he didn't tell me. Got up a bit further, the top of the drive, there's a fire engine, loads of cars that obviously I didn't recognise. At that point, they were starting to do their gimmicks. Is that there was a shed on fire. I don't own a shed. Between the garage and the house, there's this shed on fire. I'm thinking, what the hell is going on here? And Melanie said to me, I don't like surprises. People who know me well will know that. I can be quite stroppy. I'm a grandfather now, and I'm known as Grumps, not a granddad or of whatever. And so as I was getting out the car, Melanie said to me, "So just enjoy yourself." I used a 4-letter word that I've only used on the BBC once after the Atlanta final, which they cut, so not many people know that, but it begins with S. And I got out, and I'm just fuming, absolutely fuming. I've got a briefcase in my hand. I didn't know what to do. I was sort of walking around in circles. Clarkson comes up. Shit scared that I'm going to hit him, which I wish I did. That didn't know what to do, so I went in the front door. What you don't know on the programme is my mum and dad were in the house, and I got such a hard time from my mother. I can't believe you. This is your charity. You should be out there of playing the game. Took me half an hour before I calmed down, before I'd agreed to come out and finish the filming. It was still a bit frosted at that point. But yeah, they all three of them had a different task. So James May was the shed, and it was going to be his tool shed, and he was placing all his tools in it. Clarkson had to build a fountain, but it had to be the biggest, powerful of shower for that. So he dug a great big hole in the garden, and filled it with water. And Richard was that he was doing a barbecue, but it was a jet engine. And so when he set up the barbecue, that's what set the fire to the shed. There were daffodils of all around the garden. We don't have any daffodils in there. We can't grow because the deer eat everything. So it was all a bit weird. From the bit of ground where the shed was, there's a whole load of ready mixed concrete across our grass. What's all that about? With a pair of welly boots stuck in it. It was just crazy. That my wife and I went away on holiday the day after. We got invited out to Barbados by a mutual friend that has supported rowing a huge lot over the years. When we were in public, I was very civil. Very much of what the outside world sees of me other than close friends. When I was with my wife alone, we never spoke. I never spoke to her once for the week that we were away. They cleared it all up. One of the agreements there was 2 agreements that they had to do. One that have me on the show to be the star in the reasonably priced car, which they never did. And the other one was that they had to return the garden back to it. Well, everyone says this garden was your pride and joy. No, it wasn't. We live in the middle of a beechwood. It's got no topsoil anywhere. I've shipped in loads of topsoil over the years to try and make a bit of grass grow. As I said about the deer, there's no point of having any flowers of any sort. They cleared all away the concrete, 3 skip loads of concrete that they broke up and took away from that. I've got to sit on mower. So when the grass did vary, of course, all the holes that they dug have sunk. And so you're going around and you're sort of hopping over there and then you just get fuming. So you walk back into the house. So the old quietness all starts again. And so it went on for years and years and years. It took them a year they would come out and try and of smooth out the holes that they did. It's still never been smoothed over from the year of support. And I still go out there every now and again and fume over it. One day I might sit down and watch the programme. These quick fire questions, sorry about that.
It's a hilarious thought to think that one time you go out into your garden stuff now and again and you just think, Clarkson! That's
I saw him last year at the Chelsea Flower Show. First time I've seen him. I can't remember even what year that was, pre-2012, I saw him and I went and got him in a headlock from behind. Who's this? And then when he realised it was me, we did have a little bit of a joke about it. That was the only time I've seen him. But he wouldn't let me on the show because he was worried that I was going to hit him. He was probably right.
That's fantastic.
Awesome.
I might have taken the car in the reasonably priced car and drove it into one of his special cars. I would have quite enjoyed that.
I think that would have been an appropriate response for sure.
That's it. Great.
That's it from our quick fire round questions. We wanted to ask if the audience had anything for Steve before
Just
we go.
quickly, yeah, go.
Brian?
Don't let this one in the front row speak.
Famously, you invited somebody to shoot you if you ever got on the boat again. Can I ask you now if you're doing any rowing, and if not, how are you keeping fit?
Last time I got in a boat with somebody sitting here in the front audience, where we did a row past at Henley 41 years after my first Henley win. It was Eric's second win. That win was very special. My rowing club, the one I spoke about a few times tonight, were absolutely rubbish. Maidenhead looked after us brilliantly. We went into Leander, champagne was flowing. We had a great evening. Very special indeed. So 41 years of getting back into the boat. Those that you know Eric and know a little bit about me, we're not the most of healthy individuals that are around now, but it was great. We actually used the boat that we raced in So we're a bit fat, overweight, and slow. The boat was more overweight. It was one of the original carbo crafts, or the first generation of the carbo crafts. It was a special build for Chris Bailey and Jim Clark to use at the Moscow Games. They never got on with it, but it got handed down to the sculling squad. We loved it. I ended up buying it. It's actually at Eric's yard at the moment, still putting on more weight, but it was very special. So that was the last time I went out in the boat. It was awful that we could hardly move. We went out in a boat 3 or 4 times before. I was in a world of hurt. I couldn't get up the slide. Eric was better than I was. I suppose it's that mentality, is that when we actually got to Henley and on the race course, we didn't go over the full distance of the shortened distance that us at Henley allow rowers to be. We were leading some 8s, so we nipped in a little bit further up. We had to have a little rest before we got into the enclosures. And it was painful to get over the course, and we looked awful. But so many people came up and said, that was so special to see you out in the boat. That was fantastic. A year on from that, I was with the Chinese, and Jurgen wasn't there, but his wife had come down that lives quite locally and took a video of us. So I got a video of it from Jurgen a year later to the day. Do you remember this? Yes, I remember it. That was the last time I went out in a boat.
So, but you didn't answer the question. What are you doing now to stay fit?
I don't stay fit. I don't stay fit. I was getting up to Paul Rushton's weight. So that's encouraged me to lose weight. When I saw him last, our weights were almost similar, and I made a threat with him. He was my best man at my wedding, and we always said that if he got lighter than me, that we would go out in a boat together. I think he did nip, so he says, and nobody ever trusts what Paul says, that he did get slightly lighter than me. And seeing him today is that I've lost 9 kilos in the last few weeks, and he's put those 9 kilos on and a few more. So I don't think there's any chance that we're getting out in a boat in our lifetime. I play a little bit of golf, try to play twice a week, but very, very badly. And I'm thinking, I did Chris Hoy's Tour de Four last year. I'm doing it again this year, so I've got to get out on a bike and do a little bit. Yeah, fitness stuff is what I did in the past.
Well, thank you very much. I organise a weekly crew at Leander, a load of 80-year-olds. So when you get that age, we'll let you in.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And don't hold your breath.
Any other questions? Yes.
Steve, what was your start sequence in your 4?
What do you mean by sequence?
What, did you start with a draw, a half, or did you just go balls out from the go?
Same as I did in most of the boats that I raced in, apart from one when we were juniors with Francis Smith, where he said after 250 metres we'll go through the start process again. And when you're flat out, boat speed at its highest, you start trying to put a half stroke in. It doesn't really work. Three quarters of stroke for the first stroke, levering the boat, trying not to jump on it, of trying to move the boat forwards and not backwards, because normally with the excitement is that you put so much force through the stretcher that pushes the boat backwards the wrong way. It's 2,000 metres that we race. We don't want to make that 2,000 and a few centimetres longer. The second stroke is a half stroke. So you've got that first draw. That's where you can stab it in a little bit more, back to about 3/4. By the time you get to 5 strokes, 6 strokes, you're at full length. We used to have a legs call on the 5th stroke to try and make sure that all the power was in there. And once you're full length, that's full length for the rest of the course until you blow up, which has happened a few times.
Thank you.
Yep.
Listening to you speak earlier, and having known you for as many years as we have, you made me think about a question.
You think?
Well, I was thinking, I was sitting down. Because I remember after 84, you said to me, I said to you, what's next? You said, I want to win a sculling gold. You sat there and you said that you weren't very good at sculling. You're obviously better than what you thought you were. We did that.
I went faster than that impacker than you did
I know you
when
did,
I sold
yeah.
it to you.
Yeah, I thumped it. I remember doing the This Is Your Life programme when Percy Carpenter came on, which is the Ollie Zeidler of those days now. And he said, I know he couldn't speak English, but his interpreter said that one day you'll be the best Olympian in rowing. I then listened to what you said about your sculling. I met up with a guy that you beat at Henley in the Diamonds, Brad Lewis, the American guy. And he said to me, that was, in 86? So after you'd done 84, 86, he said, why isn't Steve in a single? He will be the next best thing since Percy Carpenter. 85, after your Olympics, you had a bad one at the World Championships. Carpenter won. Why do you think retrospectively, I mean, obviously your career's gone on to what it is now and is the best that anyone can ever aspire to. But going back to what you said about you would probably give up everything to win a gold medal in a single scull. If you then could go back in time and think about that, you beat Carpenter in Mannheim, you beat Brad Lewis, and they were two of the best at the time. Would you still go by what you said then? You would want to give up everything to get a single scull gold medal, or two or three, like Carpenter did, or the Russian guy. Hard question.
I have enough. Yes, I would have loved to win an Olympic gold medal in the single. That was my dream from a 16-year-old. So with all the success that I've had, I failed of what I wanted to really do. And people find that a bit odd. That's why I quite enjoy of still being reigning Commonwealth champion in the single, because that was the best race I had. And I'd learned.
You beat the bronze medalist that year, Verdonk.
Eric Verdonk, yeah.
That was probably your best ever sculling race I ever saw you do.
Yeah, you didn't see me very often, but
No, because you was ahead of me. But that's what makes me ask.
But yeah, no, I'm disappointed that I never won that sculling gold.
Do you think you could have done, on hindsight? Do you think you could have done?
Possibly.
I would say
The timing for me, the timing was all wrong.
It's a small mortgage.
The timing was all wrong completely. That because having a starting rowing as a rower, then going sculling, having the strength and power that as I did, is that doesn't help moving a single very well.
Yeah, but you did move a single very well.
Okay.
No, you did do it very well.
Possibly that I could have achieved that. The hardest decision was, do I do the 4 in 84 or I do the single? You're right, I did beat Carpinen. That he went on to win the gold that year on the build up to those games.
But that was that was the swan song of his career, wasn't it? 85. Okay, at the Worlds.
Yeah, he won there as well. He won
there
three.
as well.
He won 3 Olympic gold medals. He won 2 World Championships.
Yes, but then between there and 88, he didn't make the final in 88.
He was an old man.
Yeah. But you were up and coming.
Yeah, but then you had Thomas Langer coming in.
You would have beaten him.
Well, you beat him at the juniors, and
Yeah,
he was 3 years younger than me. As I said, 84 was the hardest decision because I'd proven that I'd moved forward from the changes that we'd made. Do I go to the LA Games with the boycott boiling around at that point as well? Is that there was a chance of winning a medal, but there was a chance of not making the final. Where if I got into a sweep boat, is that the gold medal. To go on one of the training camps with the hierarchy that we had at that point, I had to make a pact that at Mannheim Regatta that you talked about, I was allowed to do the single on the first day, but I had to row in the 4 the second day. The Cox 4 that was the basic of the 4 that was John Beattie was in it, that I took his place. John was in the bow seat, I went into the stroke seat. Is that they beat on the Saturday the West Germans that finished 4th. They nipped them on the line. I got into the 4. We won by 8 seconds from one day to the next. You're thinking, okay, this is around the boycott. The New Zealanders were the reigning world champions, but you knew that East Germany would come back from the disappointment of getting beaten by the Kiwis of that year. They put all their stars into that boat. Beating up at Lucerne was special. But I felt that a possible finalist, possible at best the bronze medal at the Olympic Games in the single.
That was 84 though.
In 84, in the single.
84,
No,
85 afterwards.
this is quick fire questions, Paul.
Sorry. Sorry.
Is that you win that gold medal. So I went back into the single the following year, had an awful season, gave up, literally gave up the sport, went away bobsleighing, competed in a few bobsleigh races, and that drew me back into the sport because I realised I wasn't going to do anything in that sport because we were rubbish. The best result I got was 11th at a World Cup race. I left the team, went back rowing because I thought I was good at one sport. I might as well go back to that. 2 weeks later, the next World Cup race, they got the silver medal. So again, me leaving the team, they do quite well. You can judge that in any way you want. And that because of 85 of going so wrong and badly and giving up the sport, what drew me back was the Commonwealth Games. When I started talking about Andy about doing the pair and going on to Seoul, is that Andy had to agree not to do the Commonwealth Games because I was going to do it in the single. That was the agreement. We'd go on to the World Championships at Nottingham in the Cox pair and do that, but that he had to forfeit going to the Commonwealth Games. Marcin Crossi, as known, was in the pair with Adam Clift, the guy that I talked about rowing with as a junior. They were the Cox's pair. They'd won a silver medal at the World Championships. We used to beat them day in, day out in training. We trained together. We'd also beat them quite often when we were in the Cox pair and they were in the Cox's pair. So we knew that we were head and shoulders better than anybody else in that class. And when you start winning medals, world medals, even though I've never been in it for the recognition, is that of my life now, if I'd stayed in the single and possibly won one Olympic gold medal, possibly, I don't think so, but possibly, what would my life be? Very different.
Yeah, you got it right.
What about my kids' lives? Totally different. Even though I'm disappointed I didn't achieve what I wanted to achieve, that my life, my family's life, has been changed by what I did.
And you wouldn't have holes in your garden.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a garden that size. That's for certain.
One last quick one. Yeah.
Yeah, Steve, sustenance and timing are two great rowing endeavours, and I think we're running out a bit of timing here.
Yeah.
So leave it up to you, lovely gentlemen.
Absolutely, Steve. Thank you so much for this chat. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to speak to someone of your caliber, but not just because of your achievement, but because of the mindset that you still carry with you to this day. You are a true winner through and through, and everything you do in life, from the outside looking in, it seems that there is no doubt that you will be the most successful in whatever endeavour you choose. So thank you so much to Chairman of Maidenhead Rowing Club, John Steers, and the President, Laura Lyon, for organising this podcast. And it's been a pleasure. Look forward to the next one.
Thank you for asking me. I think it's the second rowing podcast I've done. I've done many podcasts over the years. but it's the first one in front of a live audience. Hopefully you're still alive and not bored to death. Even Laura Lyon's gone. Oh no, she's in the back. I did think you'd gone and get our curry, so I'm disappointed you haven't. It's nice to do it in front of you guys. Maidenhead has always been a special place for me. When Eric and I were in the sculling squad at the early 80s, is that we used to do our weights at the old club on the other side of the river. There were some legendary parties there. The fireworks just wouldn't be allowed nowadays to what used to go off there. It was always a great club. It was great rowing for Marlow, but you socialised at Maidenhead. That's it. Just one story about Paul, the guy that I was debating with about my sculling career a minute ago, is that on our weight training we used to go for a run. Paul carrying a little bit more weight than most, even in those days. I think he was the lightest at 22 of stone. Is that we were running and I could hear these sort of thud of feet and looked beside me, and he's by the side. Eric was always fast. He disappeared, and Paul was by the side of me. And I said, "What shortcut have you made?" And he'd literally done it properly. And just saying that, he fell apart and didn't make it back to the club.
Had to walk back.
Well, I just want to say thank you on behalf of the club to Pete, to Tom, and to Steve. You've entertained us. You've given us so much information to think about, in terms of our sort of personal lives and objectives. Go for gold. Don't give up. Live your dreams and all that. Dream big. It's been a wonderful evening. Thank you, guys. And Steve, I just wanted to give you a little bottle to drink with your curry.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And as for today, this concludes everything for this episode. So on that note, easy there.
Cue the music.